You're tuned in to More Living with Jim Brogan, broadcast live from the Brogan Financial Studios at News Talk 98.7, where old-fashioned values, expert knowledge, and genuine understanding come together to give you the retirement straight talk you deserve. Jim's a former National Advisor of the Year recipient and a financial educator, and he's here today to talk about how you can live out the best years of your life. Jim and the Brogan Financial team have been helping retirees and pre-retirees across the Southeast for over 20 years in their pursuit of financial independence. You can reach them during the week at 865-862-6800. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn, because More Living with Jim Brogan starts now.
Hello, East Tennessee. Welcome to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. Today, I'm very excited to have on Sam Venable. You know, a great journalist tells a story by providing facts, engaging the audience, and writing a compelling narrative that captures both the heart and the mind of the reader. Sam Venable has been a part of the Knoxville fabric as a journalist and author for over 5 decades, writing stories about everything from hard-hitting news to the great outdoors and even some satirical humor. And I'm excited to sit down with Sam this morning to talk about his career and about how Knoxville and the news has changed. Sam is a graduate of the University of Tennessee, grew up in South Knoxville, went to South High School.
No. Went to Young High School.
I mean Young, excuse me. Before it was South Young. Now, I went to Doyle.
Oh, did you?
I did. I grew up off Alcoa Highway, so I'm a South Knoxville boy, too. So that was, of course, when I went to Doyle, it was just Doyle and South Young.
Right.
And then, of course, you know, when you went, it was just...
It was South and Young.
You had South and Young.
South was in a city school. Young was a county school.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So he spent almost all of his career at the Knoxville News Sentinel until his supposedly retired in 2014, right? And since then, he's continued to moonlight at the News Sentinel and has written numerous articles for other publications and books. Sam, it's great to have you with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Now, you're a journalist and an author, but you actually entered college as a forestry major.
That's exactly right. I was a forestry and wildlife management major, and I jokingly say I maybe studied a little too much wildlife, but what it was, I was well on my way. Until my junior year, I hit a chemistry course and a statistics course that put a roadblock in my way.
For forestry? For
forestry and wildlife, yeah. And I was wondering what to do. That's all I had ever really wanted to pursue in a career was forestry or wildlife, something like that. And one of my friends made a suggestion. I can't use it verbatim on the radio, but he said, "Venable, you are so full of bovine scatology." And he said, "You'd make a pretty good writer. You ought to try journalism." I had never worked on a high school paper. I didn't even know how to type. I'd never done anything like writing. But
yeah, journalism and forestry seem like it's quite opposites.
At that time, I'm still journalism. Forestry's on the ag campus. And journalism at that time was part of the business school. It was a school of journalism within the College of Business Administration. So I suspect I took one course the next quarter just to see if I liked it. Fell in love with it. It was truly the light bulb going off moment. I've never experienced anything quite like that from a career. That this is what I like to do, and. So
now, did the chemistry and all that? Did you almost fall out of college?
Well, it was that quarter. Yeah, it was getting kind of rough, and that was back when if you got out of college, there was plenty of work. The government put you to work. If you were a male, they'd give you a camouflage clothes and a rifle and everything, which was fine. I wasn't a problem with the draft. I was in advanced ROTC, so I was headed for that. That's another story because they ended up discharging me because of my back. But in any event, Yeah, I had to switch everything over there because I would have failed out of the forestry program because I had done some chemistry, but this was getting on an advanced level that you had to have, I'm sure, for studying cellular compositions and everything in wood and all that. But then the statistics too. If you're going to, I mean, I understand the importance of it, but I just was not wired for it. And
well, and then they kind of combined, right? Because your first job at the News Sentinel was you covered outdoors.
It really worked out well. I worked on two different papers before I came to the News Sentinel. One was the Knoxville Journal, the old Knoxville Journal here.
And you were in Chattanooga too, right?
Yeah, I was in Chattanooga. I was working at the Journal. I mean, everything, I swear, fell into place just like a hand in a glove. I switched to journalism, and within, I guess, 6 months, I got hired at the Journal. So I was still in school and learning journalism in class and also on the job. And so, yeah, that just worked out wonderfully. Then I went to a paper in Chattanooga, and then having that joint background in journalism and outdoors, in 1970, this is when all the first Earth Day was and the big environmental movement. And the News Sentinel had always, ever since World War II, the News Sentinel had recognized the importance of outdoor coverage around here because of all the lakes, the mountains, and everything. And so they had always had not always, but they had long time had a full-time outdoor writer. And they hired me in 1970 as the outdoors writer. And, you know,
you're off to the races.
I'm still pecking that computer.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's funny how God directs our lives, because you said, you know, you started out in forestry and then you switched to journalism, which seems so different. You know, I was a music ed major, and here I am. I ended up in a career in investment finance.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't realize, though, is musicians often are good at math.
That's understandable.
Because, it's a very mathematical. Music is very mathematical in a lot of ways, so it's just kind of funny. But anyway, it reminded me of that. Now, was there ever a time, Sam, that you wanted to leave the small town of Knoxville and write for a large publication like the New York Times or Washington Post? Or
well, they never did come calling, so no. No, I was, you know, this was my hometown.
Yeah.
And I was doing a job that I loved. I mean,
well, and if you love the outdoors, especially when you started, because
mercy, I did.
What a great place to do that.
Years, it was just essentially it was. I got paid to go outdoors and hunt and fish and talk to folks and do that. I mean, you know.
What were your favorite types?
The briar patch.
So, what were your favorite types of stories to write about during that era?
Well, I started just, you know, covering it like it was a news beat. My background was news, so I was certainly covering the news that was happening with the Wildlife Agency and things like that. But I did a ton of features on people who were in the outdoors that were really proficient in what they did or whatever, and it didn't take long to evolve into humor. I've just got this warped sense of humor, and within 2 or 3 years, after I started writing a column in 1971 there at the News in the outdoors, and just within 2 or 3 years, I was using a lot of humor in those columns, and got to the point that later on, after I'd been there 10, 12 years, they were using a lot of my humor just in the main sports, and so then we had a change of editors in 1985. And the new editor asked me, would I like to move to the main paper? And
you went to news at that time,
and
right?
I said, as long as I can keep doing what I'm doing. He said, fine, just have at it. Just, instead of being in sports, we'll put you in the main part of the paper. So that's what I did, and just loved it. I mean, I've had the most blessed career that you could imagine. That I've always said I had the longest leash of any reporter anywhere. They just, I had deadlines, I had daily deadlines, but that you just learned to live with that. But I mean, they had no office hours or anything. Just go write. And
and then you spent a lot of time outdoors.
Yeah, and which is what you truly freedom can you have than that if you're going to be a writer?
That's great.
And I did a lot of magazine work then. There was years I was writing for a lot of different magazines too, but in addition to being at the News Sentinel. But mostly just evolved mostly into humor. Now I certainly do a lot of serious columns too, but mostly it's light, it's humor stuff.
We're visiting with Sam Venable, a real fixture here in the Knoxville market since really 1970, 1971. Been a writer, been published many times. So when we come back, we're going to have more with Sam. I want to talk about his evolution from news into humor. He kind of started to touch on that. So we'll spend more time getting to know Sam. Stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back to More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. I'm Jim Brogan. We're visiting with Sam Venable, columnist, been a fixture here in the Knoxville market for, well, over 50 years. And Sam's such a storyteller, and even off air, you're telling me these stories. I'm kind of like, whoa, let's slow down. Let's wait till we're on air. And anyway, it's kind of funny. But anyway, we're talking about his career, and we mentioned you transitioned into news in 1985.
Yeah.
And then, now you had already started introducing humor in some of your outdoor stuff. Sure. So talk about the evolution to then getting more into satire.
It just, I don't know. I guess my friend was right. I guess I'm full of that bovine scatology, and I've always been a storyteller, and it just became natural. I looked at the news almost as my straight man. Now, certainly there are topics that you can't laugh.
Well, and news can be so serious.
Sure, but a lot of times I would just let the news, like I said, be my straight man. Here'd be a crazy story. And I just take off, making fun of it or laughing with it and all that. And being from this part of the country, being from East Tennessee, being a Knoxville native really helped me because I can poke fun and laugh with my people. You could not come into Knoxville and do some of the stuff about Southern Appalachia and Southern Appalachians that I do if as a foreigner. You just can't do that. I couldn't do it in another city. But in Knoxville, I can do it because it's family. You get to keep the family dog. That's just the way it is.
Now, you're holding a book there.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. Speaking of satire and humor, tell us about that. What's the name of that book there?
This book is called Naked Dining is Not on My Menu. And it's another humor collection. I've done 15 books, and the majority of them are humor books. And this is a collection of humor columns. And the title comes from the lead story that's in here about some restaurants, one in New York, one in London, one in Paris, where one night a week they cater to nude diners. And we talk about a setup. Yeah. I said if of 100 things I'd rather not do, that would be 101.
Yeah.
And I tell people, if they do decide to dine naked, never order hot soup, especially if the waiter looks very clumsy.
Oh, my goodness.
But it's whatever floats your boat. But
and the illustrations were done by your friend Charlie Daniel. Who we had on the show a couple months ago. Charlie
Daniel is a treasure. I was fortunate to work with Charlie on 2 papers. See, I was at the Knoxville Journal when I was in college, and it just so happened my desk was right close to Charlie's office. So he and I just kind of hit it off, and I'd always loved his cartoons, and his sense of humor was about as nuts as mine. I'm not near as quick.
He's a funny guy, too.
Oh, he's so funny. And then I went to Chattanooga. When I came back, he was still at the Journal. And then when the Journal closed, the News Sentinel picked him up immediately. And as it turned out, my desk and his easel were right next to each other. So we have had this both professional and personal fun relationship all along. And Charlie Daniel is the quickest to react as a cartoonist or whatever to something can happen at noon, And at 12:03, Charlie's already roughed out a cartoon about it. I've never seen anybody in my life that can be that quick and that fast too, and then just be a perfect cartoon.
Wow, my comment would be the two of you together, quite a 1-2 punch.
We had a lot of fun. Our great fun together was comparing hate mail.
Oh my goodness!
Compare our hate mail.
I guess that comes with the territory, doesn't it?
Sure. Yeah, some people love it. Some people love to hate it. So it doesn't matter. I mean, that's what.
Yeah, and he actually brought that up too when we had him on a couple of months ago.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's part of the job.
Yeah.
If you think everybody is going to just your pearls of wisdom are going to find favor with everybody, you're crazy.
What was Sam? What was one of the most memorable things you've covered in your long career?
Well, actually, the most memorable was something that occurred late in my career. All along, at both papers I'd worked at before I came to the News Sentinel, and all along, I kept hearing, because I was in outdoors, I was up in the mountains a lot, I kept hearing about a man who got shot. He was trout fishing, and his crime was trout fishing while black. And he was a young man from Sevier County who was up there fishing with some white friends. This was in 1968. It happened just days after Martin Luther King was killed. So, the tensions were high anyhow. I kept hearing about this thing. Nobody knew anything about it. It's just that he got shot. And the fellow that was accused, it's charged with attempted murder, took 20 minutes for the jury to found him not guilty. I mean, it was just an absolute abortion of justice. And everywhere I would go, people would say, "Oh yeah, I remember that," and they could name the guy that was accused of the shooting. Never knew who was it. I don't know. And finally, for Black History Month, the year I was 2014, the year I officially retired, for Black History Month, I decided. I knew it was in Monroe County. I'm going to go down there, find that dadgum court record. It's got to be there. I talked to the court clerk. She went and looked it up for me. And when I got down there, it had been, in storage for years, from 68, for Pete's sake. And it had bug eaten and rain, leaked, water had leaked and all that. But I was able to finally find his name, the victim's name, Charlie Molden. And I want you to know, I thought everybody surely is dead in this. I knew the judge was dead, the prosecutor, everybody. It took me a while, but I traced him down. He was still alive, and he was willing to talk about it. And the most wonderful person you ever met. To go through that, to be shot. The ambulance people in 1968 would not come into the Cherokee National Forest to pick up a black guy. His friends had to take him down to Tellico Plains. And then they put him in an ambulance. The prejudice he faced
that is
horrible. But he got, and we ended up doing a series called Fragments of Hate that the Sentinel ran throughout Black History Month in 2014, and just told this story of tragedy, of injustice, and eventually, the guy gets to tell his story. And Charlie and I are still friends to this day. Matter of fact, Charlie and I have been on the Phil show here when that series came out. Yeah, sure did.
What a story. We're visiting with Sam Venable this morning on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. Charlie Daniels, the illustrator. You've published more than 150 periodicals. And you're the author of, did you say 13 books?
15.
15 books.
I know that because I counted them when you're doing the, lining all this stuff up, all that baloney there at the first part of it. Yeah, you count it. Wow.
Now, you mentioned that most of the books are satirical, right?
Yeah,
satirical. And then
there's some, one of the most, this real serious book I did called Mountain Hands, and that subtitle is A Portrait of Southern Appalachia. I wanted to do a book that was about my people. This book came out, I don't remember, sometime in the early 2000s. Paul Eford, a photographer at the News Sentinel and a good friend of mine, we came up with this idea, and it took us 4.5 years to put it all together, but I tracked down about 50 people in southern Appalachia, everywhere from Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and North Georgia, who were good with their hands in something, whether it was artistry, construction, all kinds, but they worked with their hands. And Paul did a tremendous job. Each chapter starts with a picture of the people's hands, and then I tell their story and all that. But, yeah, that one was actually, I don't mean serious. I mean, it was just a good look at the people that I grew up around, that I admired so much, who had all this skill. Some of them in that book were college graduates. Some of them were barely literate, but they all had that innate skill that they could do something with their hands. But, yeah, the others, I've written 2 or 3 outdoor books that are there are a lot of humor in that. But most of my books, I mean, just look at the titles. 2 or 3 degrees off plumb. I'd rather be ugly than stupid, and stupid is misspelled in the title, STUPPID, you see. And, stuff like that. It's just...
So you started outdoors, you went into news, you got into satire. What was your favorite genre to write about?
Whatever the topic was. It didn't matter.
I thought, as I was preparing for this show, I kind of had a feeling you would say that. I used to sing. Mm-hmm. I met my wife singing professionally over at Lake Junaluska, North Carolina, with a man named Glenn Draper. And if you ever asked him,
Methodist then, huh?
Yes, I grew up a Methodist. So he if he was ever asked, "What's your favorite song to direct?" And you know what he said? He said, "Whatever I'm doing at the moment."
That is so parallel. People say, "Well, what's the best one you ever wrote?" And I said, "The one I just got through."
Exactly. That's exactly right.
But and something about it, because you're in a way, when you're doing a column as frequently as I did, you're in a sense you're on an assembly line, and people say, "Do you ever get writer's block?" No, you can't. You can't. I mean, your brain is churning 24/7 with ideas. I mean, I'll jot ideas down. Charlie does the same thing, and
he talked about that.
Yeah, always something that you can comment on.
Is there any particular piece of writing you've done that stands out to you as a career milestone?
Well, that I've been really lucky that you win some of this stuff, but that particular series, that Fragments of Hate, I'm very, very proud of.
1968. You wrote about it in 2014, but when the guy was shot in, yeah.
But, it won several national awards, and I'm very, very proud, not only just from the story standpoint, but the fact that I was able to finally tell this story about this gross injustice.
Yeah.
I mean, he was shot to be killed. The guy shot a second time and missed him and then ran. But, it hit him in the leg, and the bullet is still in his leg. That's where the Fragments of Hate in the head of the whole series started, because he has bullet fragments still in his leg. And being able to tell that man's story, what more could a writer ask? To, find a case of just a complete miscarriage of justice and expose it and write about it. It don't get any better than that.
We're talking to Sam Venable. I'm Jim Brogan. You're listening to More Living here on News Talk 98.7. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the feedback he's received from some of his readers over the years. We'll also have our Dollars and Cents segment, 3 retirement financial myths to avoid. So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
Thanks for tuning in to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. We're talking with Sam Venable. What a great storyteller. I tell you what, he's telling me as much stuff on air as he is, or off air as he is on air. We could have, if we'd kept the mics rolling, Wayne, we probably could have recorded enough for 2 whole shows here with what we're talking about. We're going to get back to Sam in just a minute, but first it is time for Dollars and Cents.
Want to be sure you are getting the most out of your retirement? For all the years of your retirement? That's the primary goal of More Living with Jim Brogan and our Dollars and Cents segment, where we provide you with an important financial tip that will help positively impact the quality of your life in retirement. And now, here's Jim with this week's Dollars and Cents tip.
3 retirement financial myths you should avoid. Number 1, the myth that you should live off your income and not touch the principal when it comes to investment returns. And that's a very frequent myth that we hear. And adhering to this strategy could really leave you exposed to inflation shortfalls. There are a couple of real shortfalls to this. So a lot of people feel like, when I go into retirement, I'm going to invest my money and I'm just going to live off the interest or the dividends. If you're invested in stocks. And the problem with that, number one, if you're saying you want to just live on the interest, inflation will just kill you. You say, well, I'll take, I have $1 million. I want to draw $40,000 a year from that. So I'll put it in CDs and treasuries and bonds. The problem is in 10 years, you're still only going to be getting $40,000 a year and you're going to be needing $60,000 a year. And so it could be very, very dangerous. The other side would be, well, I'm going to live off stock dividends. But in order to get enough income, you've got to have a 3 or 4% dividend yield. And so now you're looking for stocks that only pay dividends. The problem with all of that thinking is when it comes to funding income in the short term in retirement and then having growth of that income in the long term, what we should be focusing is total return of investment. And there's 2 main components to total return. There's the dividend or the interest, whatever the yield is, and then there's the capital appreciation. And we need both of those things over time in order to meet our needs. In the early years, I think we should live on our safe money. And that gives the risk money time to grow and have capital growth to fight inflation over time. Myth number 2, get your cash flow from bond interest and stock dividends. So this is where the stock dividends can kind of be a problem. I like stocks that pay dividends. And if you have stocks that pay dividends, especially if they're not in an IRA and you're being taxed on them, then you by all means should live on those. That should be part of your income. But we don't want to focus just on high-yielding dividends. If we had the last 7 years, you wouldn't have really had any exposure to what we call the Magnificent Seven, NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft. You wouldn't have had exposure if you'd been thinking, I only want to have stocks that pay 3 to 4% yields. And then myth number 3, and maybe what might be the most dangerous myth, hold bonds. The percentage of bonds that you should hold should approximately equal your age. You've probably heard that. So if you're 65, you should have 65% of your money in bonds and 35% in the stock market. I think that rule was real popular when people only lived into their mid-60s and into their 70s. But with the increased lifespans today, a heavy mix of bonds will weigh down your return over time. That doesn't mean you shouldn't own any bond exposure, but because it does provide diversification in a bad market. But over time, heavy bond mix will produce a drag on your return and create a problem fighting inflation. So those are my 3 retirement myths to avoid in 2025.
That's our Dollars and Cents segment for this week. You can find this week's Dollars and Cents segment and others by visiting BroganFinancial.com.
Check us out online, BroganFinancial.com. You can click on radio to listen to all of our shows. We're also podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Also, my next class is through Pellissippi State, Hardin Valley, and it's Tuesday, March the 25th. I know that's a little over a month away. Tax planning in your retirement. So in this 2-hour session through Pellissippi State's Lifelong Learning, we're going to talk about saving on income taxes, well, all kinds of taxes in retirement. You know, and even leading up to retirement, what should you be thinking about? You know, we live in a world that I don't think we'll ever see income taxes lower than they are right now. Now, to understand that, we got to understand the history of income taxes and all those things. But that's what I cover in this class. How can you minimize taxes in the long haul, which for many of us, taxes is the biggest expense we'll ever have in our lifetime. So you can find out more at PellissippiTaxPlanning.com. It's on Tuesday, March 25th, 6:30 p.m. Again, PellissippiTaxPlanning.com. Today, we're visiting with Sam Venable, a great storyteller. We're talking about his history here for over 50 years here in the Knoxville market, just been a fixture. And we mentioned the power duo of you and Charlie Daniel. But you mentioned readers. What's the most, you said you're going to get hate mail, but what's your most memorable feedback you've received from a reader in Knoxville?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Is there something that jumps to mind?
Well, I know with Charlie and I, we have... back when we were both full-time in the paper and all this, there were 2 or 3 individuals that they were equal opportunity haters. Yeah, they hated Charlie's stuff, they hated my stuff, and so we frequently heard from both of them. And we laughed. Charlie may have shared it with you when he was on here, but one of the greatest letters he ever got, a guy just started, "Dear Charlie," or probably didn't call him Charlie, just ripped him to shreds, and then signed it, and then P.S. And he said, "I never did like your music either." Thinking it was Charlie.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding!
The singer, and that happens constantly with Charlie, you know. But
oh my goodness, that is hilarious.
Every now and then, I'd just roll over to Charlie. He'd roll over to me, and I said, "Well, so and so, I believe he's off his meds again now."
Did you ever get a letter that was particularly fulfilling, particularly encouraging, that stands out?
Well, you get a lot of. You get attaboys, and it's really funny when I write something that's really controversial, just like right before Donald Trump was inaugurated, the second inauguration. I wrote a piece that said that, half of the country is happy with him, half of the country is not happy with him. And I expressed my own opinions in there. That's the thing, and I got a tremendous feedback, of positive feedback on that. But a lot of people will write and say, "Well, I know they're ripping you to shreds, but I want you to know I like that." Anytime you do something like that, you generally hear more from the positive feedback. Really?
Because it seems like in today's world we hear more from the negative.
Well, I think what they do is they just figure, well, everybody hates that, and I know they're ripping him to shreds. And one thing I'd really like to point out that I think a misunderstanding about journalism. And I'm talking journalism. I'm not talking about entertainment TV. I'm talking news gathering,
true journalism,
news writing, and all that. Is that when you're a reporter, you are writing the news. You're writing. You're quoting the authorities. You're not injecting your opinion into it. As a columnist, it's just the opposite. And when people, sometimes they'll object to something and they'll call or they'll write. And they say, "Well, but you didn't tell the other side of the story," or you didn't say essentially what I, the caller, am thinking. And I said, "Well, that's fine. It's your opinion." And I said, "They pay me for my opinion, and that's the difference. You're giving away for free. I charge for it."
Well, and so columnist, you're giving your opinion,
right?
True news, hard-hitting news, that's getting harder to find, isn't it? Because so much of the news now injects their bias.
Well, I don't know that it depends on how you're looking at it, and it depends on the individual story, too. It's just... It has, certainly, journalism has become polarized, but I'm saying there's a difference between journalism in the media and entertainment.
Right. But it's merged a lot.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a lot of times that's the bad thing about journalism. They're trying to go for the hits. They want to see.
They're trying to get eyeballs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think you can trust the news anymore?
Yes, I think you certainly can. Certainly can, depending on the source. I think that, and the mass media gets bashed a lot now. There are a lot of sources that I trust from their news gathering. The Associated Press, for Pete's sakes. I will certainly. I trust that news. One other thing that I will always point out about real journalism versus entertainment journalism, we make mistakes. No question about it. I mean, we're human.
We're all human.
True journalism, true newspapers or whatever will correct a mistake either on air or in print. You'll look on page 2 of the News Sentinel every now and then. There'll be a clarification, something like that. Entertainment journalism, there's never a retraction, never anything. It's just, we said it, so it must be true.
We're visiting with Sam Venable. What a great storyteller. We're talking about his remarkable career. You were honored. You were inducted into the East Tennessee Writers Hall of Fame in 2009, and then in 2018 inducted into the Tennessee Journalism Hall of Fame. I mean, you went from a forestry major to over a 50-year career in journalism.
I said that I went from growing trees to writing on dead trees in paper.
That's funny, yeah.
I've got to be the only journalism graduate at the University of Tennessee that all of my background, you get elective studies that you can use. Oh, mine are dendrology and silviculture, game birds management, that type of stuff.
Well, when we come back from our final break, I want to ask Sam some fun types of stuff, like hunting and fishing and just different kinds of things. So stay with us. This is More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Welcome back to News Talk 98.7's Brogan Financial Studios, where Jim Brogan is coming to you live with important news and advice to help you achieve your dream retirement. Get ready to learn and live. Here's your host, Jim Brogan.
This is More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. Thanks for tuning in as we're visiting with longtime journalist here in Knoxville, Sam Venable. Your book there, Sam, tell us again the name of the book.
This one is called Naked Dining is Not on My Menu. And again, that's just the lead column.
So how can people get that book?
They can get it. It's online. It's in many stores. I know the Museum of Appalachia carries just everything I've ever written. Where are some of the other stores?
So I guess certainly somebody Googled your name, they could be able to pull and put books. They'd be able to pull that right up.
They can. Actually, there is another Sam Venable author that's written novels. That ain't me.
Yeah, so make sure you're looking at the right Sam Venable.
Yeah, make sure you got the right Sam Venable.
Now, Sam, you were an athlete growing up. You played football in high school. Your dad was involved in athletics. Mm-hmm. Your sports love is fishing or hunting? All of the above.
What's in season?
Yeah.
And fishing, during the fishing time, you like to fish, and in the fall and winter, you like to hunt, although I like to fish in the winter.
Did you ever want to be a writer who covered the Volunteers?
Never.
Really?
I did a lot back, in the early 90s, the sports department. They sent me one time over to the UT library during the UT Alabama football game to do a column on that. And it was a marvelous, I didn't even have come up with that idea. I'm not saying it's a marvelous column. It's a marvelous idea to do that. Offbeat stuff, crazy stuff. And they used to send me to bowl games and that type of stuff. But I'd do color stories and talk about.
But you never wanted to be a beat writer.
Not
for Tennessee
Vols. Lord, no.
What's your favorite spot to fish, and what do you like to catch?
Whatever's on the end of my line. I've been so fortunate to be able to, quote, do it all.
My dad, he loved to fish crappie.
Yeah.
He loved to go up to Douglas Dam.
Yeah.
And he would fish crappie, and it is crappie.
Yeah.
My wife's from South Carolina.
Oh, yeah, they don't call it
They all
that
say
down
crappie.
Crappie.
I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny. Is deer your go-to for hunting, or do you hunt other stuff?
I do. I really honestly don't hunt and fish as much as I used to. I tease it. It's not as much fun when you're having to pay for it instead of getting paid for it. But I'd say, waterfowl, deer, turkey like that are my favorite hunting. And fishing is, I do bass fish. I love, but the last few years, the most fun fishing I've got is taking my grandkids and bluegill fishing and shellcracker fishing and all that. But it doesn't matter as long as, I just like to fish.
And you love being outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Now, just like me, you're a Knoxville native and a volunteer. You married your high school sweetheart.
Sure did.
What's the secret, Sam, to a long and successful marriage?
Find a good mate. No,
well, I like to
have tremendous luck. My wife and I talk about this a lot. When you get married, we were 21, I guess. It's a roll of the dice. Who knows at 21? Who knows at 51? If that's the right. But marriage is a process of working together, compromising, and that type of stuff. And I'm probably a little more hard. I'm sure my wife would agree. I'm the more hard-headed of the two. But I have a wonderful, wonderful wife who is not only very loving and very caring. She has just the most. She's very compassionate, and she has a true willingness to help other people that it never fails to astound me that she will just immediately know the right thing to say, to do, or whatever. And but a lot of it is luck. We have friends. You've probably had friends been married 2 or 3 times and finally found the right person. The right person. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And my wife and I both feel very, very fortunate. In April, we will have been married 56 years.
Wow. Yeah, my wife and I are very blessed. We just celebrated 31 years in December. And I like to say we've been happily married for 27 years. Yeah. But no, you're all joking aside. You're right. Yeah. It's quite a blessing to find that one person. And yeah, it really is. Now, you did officially retire from the paper, 2014?
2014, yeah.
And you haven't stopped writing, and so that's why I jokingly said you really didn't retire. What's next for you in terms of writing, Sam? Do you have any upcoming projects or books in the works?
It used to be when the publisher would call me and said, we haven't had a book from you in a few years or whatever, send me a note or email. You got anything in mind? And I say, I'm still playing right now. I just want to enjoy and play. But, I'm still going to write. It's getting harder and harder. It was easier for me to write 4 a week than it is to write 1 a week.
I can get that. I can get that because your brain's turned on to that constantly, right?
You're like a truck driver getting his revs, a 18-wheeler.
Sure.
Once you get those revs up, you're ready to go. But if you have to stop, start like that. So a lot of times I will write 3 or 4 columns at a time.
How else are you spending your retirement years?
Oh, going to doctors like everybody else. We're lucky that our entire family lives, except for I have one brother that lives in New York. But the rest of that, all my siblings, my kids, my grandkids, all live here in Knoxville. And what a blessing that is to have. So our family is together a lot, and I really do love that. I think I will write till the day that they lay me in the ground. When you're a writer, you just, you feel like, well, I can comment on that or I can write about that, but I don't have any real specific there's no books in mind or whatever. It's just,
well, you're going to keep writing, and I'm sure you're going to come up with some great stuff.
Well, I hope.
We're visiting with Sam Venable. How can people follow you? I guess we mentioned Googling you, but if they do, to understand there's another Sam Venable that writes novels. You don't write novels. Yours a collection of columns and things like that.
And outdoor pieces. And then I do a lot of mountain stuff. Like I said, the Mountain Hands. I have the alpha and omega of mountain coverage. Mountain Hands is deep look at people that work with their hands and appreciate it. And then I have another mountain book called How to Talk and Write Good. And it's how to TAWLK and RITE good. And it's just hillbilly dictionary.
That's great stuff. Yeah. Well, Sam, thank you for taking time out of your schedule.
Having me. It's been fun.
It has been fun. I can't believe time's already gone. That's Sam Venable, just great journalist for over 50 years here in the Knoxville market, kind of a legend and a stalwart in the area. Check him out online. Just Google Sam Venable. But he is the column writer, not the novelist. Today we visited with Sam and her great stories, because Sam's all about living life the best you possibly can. So thank you, Sam. Thank you to Wayne for engineering the show. Thank you to Jill for helping produce the show. You've been listening to More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
The views expressed by Jim Brogan and his guests are not that of Cumulus Media. Any discussion of financial, legal, and tax planning strategies is not intended to be individualized advice and is general in nature. Always consult with your advisor for advice specific to your needs. This program's content does not represent a recommendation of any particular security, strategy, or investment by Jim Brogan or Brogan Financial Incorporated.